All right, the June 7th meeting of the Rockport School Committee is now in session. This meeting is going to be recorded and saved for later playback. It's being broadcast live. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from May 17th. Everybody can, this is the first time, Amy, you can vote on accepting the minutes. Are there any amendments or changes that anyone would like to make? No? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of 5/17?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment. We don't have a public tonight, so we'll move on to correspondence.
So, Mr. Chair, in your drive, I included a PDF of the committee's invite to the MASC Summer Institute, just for your information, so that if all of you want to discuss it, whether you'd like to go or not, the invite is there, and all the information is there, and you can work through Amanda if anybody has an interest in going. And I do know the only other order of business through MASC in this regard is that Amy will, at some point, be on the hook for the charting the course
So
training.
I'm doing that in June,
Perfect.
this June.
Okay. So, no pressure to
Great.
attend this, but I just
Okay.
wanted you to see it, just in the event that you guys are interested.
Are you subtly indicating that maybe there's something I need to see on July 15th here?
I think more importantly is to
teasing,
say,
just
yeah, I know
teasing.
you are. I think there's a couple good ones on there, though. Public
Yeah.
comment update is good. I think managing meetings, that kind of stuff, so we'll see.
Well, I think we all felt, those of us that went down to the Mass Association of School Committees, Mass Association of School Superintendent joint meeting this past year, we thought that was
Mhm.
incredibly valuable. So if you, the committee would like to take a look at this and see if there's something that is very intriguing, we can work, as you said, with Amanda to get on there. But I think our sort of first foray in a long time into our own professional development, I thought that was really worth the trip.
Agree.
Just thinking forward to next year, are we thinking that every year we'll send a member or two or so down there?
I think to the fall, yeah, to the joint conference was great.
Yeah, I thought,
Yeah, I thought so too. I think it's worthwhile to do on a regular basis, would be great.
I
Well,
thought
it
it
was
was nice how we could split, sort of, some people could go one some day, some people could go another day, because it can be hard to commit to 4 days or whatever, but it was nice that they allowed it to be split among us, so.
and comparing and contrasting with other districts that are larger than us, it's hard to find one that's smaller than us, but that was, I thought, really invaluable in terms of what they're facing, and in terms of reflecting on what we have. So, sounds good. So we have a couple of other pieces of correspondence in the drive. I don't think it requires a lot of commentary. Occasionally, we have changes in our personnel, not surprising in a district of our size. It's kind of the natural ebb and flow of what individuals want and perhaps what we look for in terms of calibrating the needs of the district with our current resources. Parents are always very passionate about expressing what works, what doesn't work for their children, and I think two of the emails seem to be form letters, so I think unless anyone has any concerns, we've received them, we've read them, we've responded with our usual response. I'll leave it at that unless anyone wants to add to that. Okay, not seeing that. Personnel, we've got a couple of updates.
So I took the lead from Mark on this and thought I'd give you a little bit of a bio through the slide deck so that we can learn about some of our new colleagues moving forward. So we are very busy in central office and in the schools filling out the staff for the upcoming school year. So Madison Winbeek has been appointed to the position of a one-year first grade teacher covering for a full year maternity leave. Madison comes to us with a Bachelor of Education from Gordon College, just graduated. And completed student teaching at North Beverly Elementary School. Jenny Sonia has been appointed to the position of high school special education teacher. Jenny comes to us with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Salem State and an MAT, Masters of Art in Teaching, Students with Disabilities from Relay Graduate School of Education, and also has been a special education teacher most recently in Gloucester, and before that in the Bronx Compass High School. Also happy to welcome Kara Hersey. She's been appointed to the position of Elementary School Adjustment Counselor. Comes to us with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Endicott College, Master of Education in School Counseling and School Adjustment Counseling from Salem State, and just recently completed a counseling internship in the Peabody Public Schools. So those are our new players, so welcome to the district. Some movement within the district. Happy to announce that Whitney Day has been appointed to the position of Middle High School Assistant Principal. Whitney's been with us in the Rockport Public Schools for 14 years as a high school and middle school social studies teacher, and more recently as the middle school dean of students. Amanda King, congratulations, has been appointed to the position of Middle High School Assistant Principal. Amanda has spent 24 years in the Rockport Public Schools as a middle high school health teacher and also served as the interim middle school dean of students while Ms. Day was out on maternity leave. Congratulations to Anne Marie Luster, who has been appointed to the position of 6 to 12 Special Education Team Chair. Anne Marie's been with the district for 28 years as a special education teacher and most recently as the high school dean. Cheryl Keating has been appointed to the position of Executive Assistant to the Director of Student Services. Cheryl's been with the district for 25 years as Student Services Secretary. Lori McNiff has been appointed to the position of Central Office Administrative Assistant. Lori has had an eclectic 8 years in the Rockport Public Schools, spread over many, many years. Many moons ago, spent 4 years as an art teacher. Took some time away from the district, came back as a playground monitor, most recently as the Student Services Office Clerk. Bless you. And now will be appointed to the position of Central Office Administrative Assistant. And congratulations to Julia Quirk, who's been appointed to the position of Middle High School Office Clerk. Julia's been with us for 16 years as a teacher clerk. So we are still finishing up a few more hires. I think I am meeting another finalist tomorrow for a different position. And then I will let the chair know how that goes, and he can fill you in since we will be out of meetings at that point. And my hope is that barring any unforeseen situations, we should have all of our hiring done before we hit July 1st, which is pretty unprecedented in my experience. So thank you to everybody for their interest in Rockport, and thank you to really to the admin team and the staff who have spent countless hours going through resumes, setting up good interview processes. We've even had some teachers come in and model teach, which is something I was really happy to try to be able to do in a couple places. And you can't always do it based on where the candidate's from or who they are, but when we can do it, it was very valuable. So that's the
So-
personnel.
This kind of introduces, for the new hires, I know there was some discussion about, could we get a little more flavor about the people coming in? So for the committee members, does this feel like a sufficient level of detail, just a little more info, or what?
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's great information. We're such a small district that I feel like it feels strange not to recognize and know
Yeah.
something about some of the teachers. I'd love to see like a photo to put a face to it. I know that's tricky in some ways and for some reasons, but if there was a way to do that, I don't know on the, with some of the new website stuff, if that's gonna be part of that or if that's not going to be, I'm not, quite.
being discussed right now.
Yeah. That would be my only takeaway, but yeah, I think it's great. Thank you for doing that. It's interesting too, as you see some of the people coming into education and then the people that have been in Rockport, how many years they've been here and how long they stay. It's kind of a neat range.
Yeah, and previously to being here, some of the history lessons I received is we were having conversations about retention of not just students but also of staff, or how difficult it might be to get people to literally cross the bridge. And I'll tell you, we had anywhere between 18 and 25 candidates from almost all of these positions. So we had a nice pool of candidates to choose from. And the people who were willing to put themselves out there and sign with us really want to be in Rockport. So I'm really proud of the hires.
And then, Superintendent Branco, can I ask, for some of the hires who are coming in freshly minted or with not a tremendous amount of experience, in terms of support and mentorship, what does that look like?
So the state requires a minimum of a 2-year guided mentor program. So we have a pretty robust mentor program in the district. We have 2 lead teachers that run that. We were just talking about that off camera before we started, that we've got the principals will be assigning mentors to the mentees. They'll connect with them over the summer. We have 2-day, full-day orientation, district orientation, mentor-mentee training sometime in August. Off the top of my head, I don't have the date, but it's 2 full days. And then that, they progress through like monthly meetings with their mentor. They do check-ins, and a lot of it is around acclimation to Rockport Public Schools. And then the secondary part of it is really to support their growth in teaching and learning areas. So in some cases, we set them up with a mentor within their content area. Other times it's grade level. Other times it's unrelated at all, and it's more around skill sets and need. So they'll get a pretty good amount of support in that first year with us.
Could I ask, does that extend to the mental health staff?
Yeah, yes,
As well.
any professional staff, yes.
Okay, so they would have like one of the counselors
Yeah.
as their
Or
mentor?
school psychologist or somebody,
Okay,
yeah, yeah,
great,
yeah.
thank you.
And I would ask on behalf of your new assistant principals whether there's also induction and support as they make that shift.
Yes, so MASS does a great job with the superintendents and the assistant superintendents. The Massachusetts Association for School Administrators is also putting together a principal and assistant principal track or program, so to speak. I believe it's off the ground for principals. I think they're trying to pilot the assistant principal one, but there's some of us who are just discussing the fact that if it doesn't get legs, we're just going to hook them up with recent. And because I'm in a program, my mentor is really well connected, quite honestly, so she'll be able to kind of help us with that. Yeah.
And I think to piggyback on Mark's comment, I think we have coming up, not in this meeting, but at the start of next year, there's an update on what the new website will look like and the content, which might answer some of those.
Yeah, we're down to about three to five templates, so we've got multiple people looking at it from a UX and user research side right now. So once we've actually picked the new visual display and template, the content is actually already built, and then 90% of the content is there. The only thing I haven't built is the new communication stuff and the kind of who we are piece. But Mike's been working behind the scenes on the back end of the content already, and we've got a few of our eyes on 3 templates. So once we take a breath after next Thursday, I think we'll have more time to finally pick the final template, and then the hope is to unveil the new website that first, minimally by the first day of school.
I'm kind of curious about the process you have to get feedback on those templates before you go live. I'm wondering whether students or community members get to look at them before you go live.
Almost 45% of our staff are community members in this particular situation, so we've run a lot of them in-house through people who are either parents or who love website or don't love websites. She's not watching live, so my wife happens to be a professional UX researcher, so I have a little bit of an in with someone who's got some good work behind the scenes on that. So I think we're going to be in good shape with it, and the current one just is not easy to access. The information is there, but it's difficult to find. So the biggest thing is we need what we've heard from parents, and some of this went out in the survey when we asked about feedback and communication in the community survey. So one of the things we got was nobody likes attachments, which I've heard a lot in my house, and everybody wants it to be set up for the phone, not for the screen. And so some of the products don't transition to the phone well, so that we're voting those kind of off the island immediately. And 2, that's why we went to the S'more product and a couple other products around social media, so that anything should just be touch and scroll, and not embedded as a PDF, because people don't want to be doing this with the phone. So I think we're in good shape. It's really just a matter of getting the content in there and navigating a few conversations around how we market ourselves without making people uncomfortable.
So one question I have for the committee, playing devil's advocate, because in the past, what we've often run into, what makes sense internally in the school about how they envision parents will access the site often doesn't make sense to the parents.
Mm-hmm.
The things that they most want are down sub-nested in a bunch of menus. So I think it's a good point about, do we have sort of, it would be nice to have sort of some elementary, middle school, high school feedback about, do I intuitively know where to go with this template?
Yeah, I'll go back and look at that survey data. I feel like it was collected, but if it wasn't, I don't mind putting it back out there.
Okay.
Yeah,
that
I'm
sounds
okay
good.
with that. If we get down to like 2 over the summer, and we want to bring in like a cross-section of like 3 to 5 parents from each school and run it.
I think
like,
that would be-
I'm okay with that too. Yeah,
Be
that's fine.
wise,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there's always been so much frustration as we've rolled out yet another one, but I still can't
Right.
find the calendar, or
Right, right,
I still can't find
Right.
my kids' homework.
right, right. Yeah.
And I think as a part of that presentation, I think you've already said in terms of what you see maybe as a community member versus what you see as a student or a parent, might be very different and might answer some of the questions that have come across from the committee and others about, how does a kid know when they walk in who their new teachers are? So,
Yeah, we're also gonna use it kind of
That's
as
good.
one-stop shopping with internal stakeholders too, so there'll be some spots where it's staff information only. So if you don't have an RPS address, you won't get in. That always frustrates community members when they click on something and can't get to it. So we just have to make sure we continuously explain to them that that's staff drop-down is for staff. But we want to be able to say to the staff, because if you live in the world of Google Docs right now, you can drown pretty quickly in your Google folder systems. So you can imagine what that looks like in a bigger organization. So we want to make sure that staff can go to their payroll information, go to their personnel information, go to their finance information, HR, professional development, all of that stuff pretty quickly on the website without having to just scroll through all of their Google stuff.
So you're doing both the outward-facing website for students and community and the inward-facing web services that run the district, payroll,
Correct.
HR? That's great. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's why we're not done yet.
Sort of related to that a bit, and I know it's a little off topic, but since I think it's appropriate, is on the current website and on some of the documentation that's put out is the core values and beliefs, which is quite long. Have you looked at condensing, it's kind of that mission statement idea? Have you
Yeah,
looked
so
at
remember, all of
condensing
that's going away. That's what I presented.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it's actually, and it's again in tonight's slide deck. You're gonna hear a whole bunch of that tonight from me. Yeah, so all of that's actually just gonna get wiped out. And the new iteration will show up. Yeah. It'll be, we're gonna talk about graphics, we're gonna talk about logos, we're gonna talk about how to brand the mission
Right,
statement.
right,
and
right.
core
Yeah, I
values.
didn't know,
Yeah.
I guess my question was, if that had been finalized.
You're
Yeah,
gonna see some of that
that's-
tonight.
Can't wait. Perfect, I'm excited.
It's good timing.
foreshadowing, wow. Share the success so we don't have Josh here.
No, but most of us know we had a great graduation ceremony Friday evening, so congratulations to our seniors, congratulations to our retiring staff members, who are also graduating with the class of 23 to some extent. Some of us are jealous of them moving on to an interesting next phase in life. Great athletic situations. Both tennis teams, correct, made it to the tournament this spring. Girls lost a tough one to rival Ipswich. Boys won their first round match and then went down in a tough second round match. We've had some great concerts recently, and next Wednesday evening is the 8th grade move-up ceremony or graduation, and there'll be a student musicians playing there and some guest speakers, and so it should be a good event. And I know we've had lots of activity outside when it wasn't raining, so everything from field day activities to culminating trips. We have a couple more trips. I think there's one going out to Halibut Point, maybe. Is that correct?
Sixth grade.
Thank you, tomorrow, and there's a lot on my calendar right now, so they're super busy trying to get everything in before Thursday.
I think one of the most special feels about our district is the big kids. I'm thinking of the Halloween parade out front where the big kids assemble and cheer on the little kids in their costumes, the transition from middle school to high school where they're being applauded, and then at the end, the seniors walking through the halls and being applauded by the
It was
the
so,
little
the
ones.
senior
It's
parade
really
was so
moving.
cool. It was so cool to see. And again, I suppose you could try that in bigger districts, but the logistics are way more difficult, right? So it's just really intimate to see it. The kids come right over, walk through both schools, kids, kindergarten teachers high-fiving 18-year-old kids that they had, 12, 13 years
Yeah.
ago. So really, really sweet moments.
Really moving.
Yep.
That and just acknowledging the generosity of the community at the graduation ceremony, the amount of scholarship money that flows through that room is just astonishing and really a measure of how much the community does support the school system. It's not always the loudest voices on Rockport stuff that really represent the sentiments of the town towards the school. I think that's more meaningful to me, that people put their money where their mouth is, and it's always, it's mind-blowing to see what a small district can do in that
I
regard.
think it was over $300,000 in scholarship money given out. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. So thank you to the community for supporting.
Subcommittee updates. I don't know if this stage of the year we have any. Likely not.
So I have one that relates to subcommittee, Mr. Chair, right? In the unfinished business, we recently got an email from Dorothy Presser, who's our field director at MASC. saying that it took much longer than it should have, but we've completed the initial work on the policy manual, and are now ready to start scheduling meeting with whoever in the district is appropriate. So most typically, policy subcommittee. So I know it's Mark and,
Yeah,
perfect, Mark. So what I might do,
we're gonna get a couple weeks off.
well, so what I'll do, if you want, I'll reply to Dorothy tomorrow, ask her, are you interested, does she have a smattering of dates throughout July or August that she has available? Kick them back to the three of us, and it would really be the three of us working with Dorothy, and I'll ask her how aggressive she expects the timeline to be too. I can't imagine we're doing the whole review for September, right? So let's just bite off as much as we can and still enjoy our summer.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to get it done, because this is the long haul.
Right.
So when I did this in a previous district as an assistant superintendent, it could change here, but my past practices, they would come in with one whole section. And we would sit down with one section, and Dorothy would run us through the compare and contrast, so to speak, around her recommendations versus Rockport, and then there's some give and take where we kind of Rockport some stuff up and other things we adopt. And then we come through that process. In a typical school year, that section would come for a first read, a second read, and adoption. If we do the work in the summer, we'd probably just hold it. And then whatever is done would go to the committee for the first read in August or September. And then we would finish the rest of the policy manual.
So do you know, has she done the entire policy
It
manual?
sounds like she's done the entire
Done the
thing, yeah.
entire thing,
And remember, we sent them everything. We sent them student handbooks, staff handbooks, anything, athletic documents, anything that looked like it was attached to policy, so she could check for redundancies, places where we might have had an old policy versus a new policy. I think that's why it took so long, quite honestly, yeah.
Is this something they do out of the good of their heart for every district in the state, or is this something we contracted with them to do?
Yeah, so one of the first things I did when I came in and I took a look at the policy book is there was some really great work in this district around policy, but.
In the year 2002?
But what happens is, right, as you know, when the school committee turns over and you get new people, some people love it, some people hate it, some people are great at it, and some people it's just a lot of grabbing from other districts or pulling things together. So it made me a little nervous because I kept tripping over little idiosyncrasies. And so, yeah, we did agree to pay a certain amount. We pay for the full audit, and then from this point on, we'll pay an annual membership to MASC for them to store it on their server. And then as the laws change, it gets updated in real time, and it's absolutely worth that fee over time.
So I want to compliment you on that. I have, in my other life, seen school districts pick off one section of the policy manual each year.
Right.
It is enormously time-consuming.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm glad I'm on a subcommittee that has somebody out there doing that.
Dorothy's the real deal.
Thank
She's
you
been
for
doing this a long
Dorothy.
time. No,
I
she's
can't
good.
wait to meet her.
She's the real deal.
Well, and Mark, I think it's also fair to say that some of those conflicting policies would spill into some of our contractual
Yeah.
agreements, so this really sets us up with a baseline of contemporary practice, and that's a great feeling.
As a matter of fact, the best practice that most people have recommended and that I've seen in other places is to hyperlink in today's world. So
Yeah.
stop putting copies of them as appendices in the back of a handbook or so, right? It's not just here, it's happening in different places across the Commonwealth. So hopefully, as we move forward, it's gonna be literally a hyperlink out to our website. So if you open up a student handbook and you need to see policy X, you click on it, it takes you there, so that we don't have human error coming into play.
Which would allow you to search as well. I
Right.
think one of the issues that we've had historically is if we don't know if we have a policy, we'd have to turn to Amanda's predecessor and ask her if she could find it, because it was really a hodgepodge of documents kind of on a server. So this is just a quantum leap into the modern age.
In a related note, I'm noticing it, someone else is cleaning it up. We are cleaning up a lot of the MOA issues too. So historically, there's MOAs in every school district between the district and the union, and then sometimes they wind up in an MOA folder, and other times they wind up attached to the contract, and technically they're part of the contract. So we need to make sure that all of those MOAs exist as links to the current contract in a live format. So as we come into a negotiation year, it's going to be important that that contract is Google Doc'd digitally, and that those appendices and MOAs get reflected as part of the contract, as opposed to some signed piece of paper that's somewhere else. So, yeah, I think we're moving forward in a really nice direction, so.
Good. So that's unfinished business. That would move us on to new business, and kind of exciting, a lot of questions about work being done to document our curriculum approach, et cetera. So that's a document right there.
So my intent here tonight is just to finally give a little bit of a commercial about everything we've done over the school year. This year has been so much around the entry planning, around new budget development, around staffing and configuration, and quickly responding to some big initiatives through grants around ELA and STEM, that I think I was remiss in really just letting you know about all the other great work that our curriculum leadership has been doing. And the chair and I have talked about going back to the method that I think you guys were used to. So next year, it might not be monthly, it would probably be like 3 times a year. We would do some kind of, pre, mid, and post curriculum update, either from each department, or more importantly, maybe kind of wrapped into like a elementary, middle, high school format to some extent. So next year, we'll ingrain curriculum updates a little more regularly. This year, the work was was really about documentation of our curriculum. How do we represent what we do and why we do it and how we do it? And so I want to make sure I acknowledge all these people. So what you have in the slide deck is our curriculum overview, curriculum council overview. So our curriculum council is split into 2 groups. The elementary curriculum council, which is the ECC, and the secondary curriculum council, the SCC. And we meet monthly as a group. At the start of the year, we kick off with one big meeting as a full team K-12. And then the rest of the months, we do SCC or ECC. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just publicly recognize all of those players. So we've got myself and the principals and assistant principal, Goodyear, but then Stacy Twombly is the coordinator for K-2 ELA Social Studies, Julia Raftalis, 3-5 ELA Social Studies, Linda Klug, K-2 Math Science, Ann Clifton Stoops, 3-5 Math Science, Kristen Fossey, 6-8 ELA, Tammy Stein, 6-8 Math, Carolyn McWilliams, 6-8 Science, Joanne Hildreth, 6-8 Social Studies, Rebecca Mackey-Smith was 9-12 English, Eric Vent, 9-12 Math, Barbara Swanson, 9-12 Science, Scott Larson has been 9-12 Social Studies, Lil Duffy, K-12 World Language. This year, filling an open spot, Nathan Cohen jumped in as the K-12 Fine Arts Coordinator. We did not fill the health and wellness position based on an inherited budget situation, but that will be filled next year. And we're having conversations about not filling the STEM engineering because we're such a small district that will probably fall under the science department. So that will round out our team for next year. So that's the format. The team has really worked collaboratively with classroom teachers to these bullet areas. So we've been maintaining a curriculum review cycle. So I'll talk a little bit about what that was and what that will be moving forward. Making sure we have some articulated teacher-designed curriculum documents. They have also worked on supporting the implementation of some of our instructional and assessment practice work. They always help with the procurement of materials and resources that support our teaching and learning, and helping to maintain departmental inventory of resources. So we had some lofty goals this year. The biggest one was to complete a full district review and inventory of our content-specific curriculum materials. For a lot of reasons, that historically the district had focused more on site-based and teacher-developed documents, but there was no systemic through line to that work. So what I noticed as I started to take a look at the content and the way we've laid out what we do and how we do it, there was unbelievable work being done, but it just wasn't tied together in any way. And what you got when you got me was someone who spent 6 years as a director of curriculum and an assistant superintendent, and I was used to, that was really the almost my entire focus was the curriculum connections across the district. So we had a lot of conversations about historically about what we had and hadn't done in this district. So what I have on this screen is basically on the left-hand side, you're going to see the Wiggins and McTighe work. This is the unit design and planning out of their work around understanding by design. It's been around a long time. It's a very, very labor-intensive, cumbersome process that I wouldn't necessarily bring to a school district, but they literally had these gentlemen here years ago, and they did a ton of work. So a lot of our veteran teachers are used to this model of framing units this way, and it is a really, really robust way to do the work. It's just super time consuming, and it takes up a lot of professional development planning time that in today's world could be spent around looking at student data and changing instructional practices and your methodologies in the classroom. So we've kind of shifted how we like to use that professional time, but I wanted to respect the history, and some of the teachers are really rocking and rolling with this. I've done a lot of other work around Heidi Hayes Jacobs' curriculum mapping and some of the older school mapping, which is more traditional if you look at it on the right-hand side, which is really just a table doc that kind of guides you through a timeline and a format. And so what I did is I brought in this curriculum map development guide that I've used and modified in other places, did a tutorial with the curriculum leaders around this, and basically said, it's okay if you use one or the other, but I want to make sure that we have systemic consistency in general in departments and grade spans with one of them or the other one. So that was a huge shift because some departments had started with the work on the left, and then quickly went, well, we're not even close to done with that, and they jumped to the work on the right. Others were really knee-deep in this work, and others, for whatever reason, they hadn't had any maps. They had only had lessons and units developed, but no full curriculum maps. So that was really the work this year, and I'm really, really proud of the leadership of this group. I don't know about your industry, we have some educators at the table, but generally speaking, documenting your work is not like why any of us get into what we do for a living. So it's really not the most stimulating part of being an educator, but it's an important part. You know, I always say if somebody wins the lottery or retires, we need to make sure we can hand something off to the next person. We tend to be terrible at that. So you asked about the onboarding and the support we give teachers. Public education in a lot of ways is bad at that, handing off what we do and how we do it to the next teacher. And so my hope is we don't do that here in Rockport. So I'm proud to tell you that the goal was at least in all 4 major content areas by the end of the year, which is next Thursday, there will be a folder with 2022-23 PDF maps. So what's going to happen is they're going to be digital and iterative. So when they start the year next year, they're just going to do a copy as, change the date to 23-24. And in real time, if you update a lesson or a unit or assessment, the expectation is you go in, you make the change to your map. And that happens all year long, and then at the end of next year, they PDF those maps, and every year moving forward, the district will have documentation of year-end consensus mapping, which will be a big structural shift for us to really kind of keep track of what we're doing and why we do it. That was a big, heavy lift, and that's, even though we're a small district, that's a lot of teachers and a lot of work to get us all kind of pulling in the same direction. So big thank you to the content leaders on this. So I'll stop there before I go to the next topic, if anybody has questions about the mapping or the documentation of curriculum.
My question is whether that column that says standards implies state standards, Massachusetts state content standards.
Yeah, the only place it doesn't right now is, because for lots of reasons that aren't worth discussing right now, the state is archaically using the 1999 Health and Wellness Framework. It's still in political debate. So we are using the national framework for health and wellness, which is pretty common across the Commonwealth. But yeah, everywhere else it's Massachusetts. And we have to rid the language. We are not a Common Core state. Massachusetts has its own, typical Massachusetts has its own frameworks. And then there are pieces of the Common Core kind of scattered throughout. So we have to just make sure we use our solid language. So the next slide shows a couple things, more work that we're super proud of. I think, Mark, this will help with some of that front-facing and who you are piece. We spent a lot of time developing a template around curriculum overviews. This will translate right to the website when the website goes live. So we've created, they won't be one-pagers. I've showed you half a page, basically. It'll be a 2 or a 3-pager when we're done. K-12 curriculum overviews. At the top, there'll be kind of a this we believe statement. So Rockport Public Schools mathematics department believes that, yada, yada, yada. Some kind of really nice philosophical belief statement. Then you're going to see a section per school, K-5, 6-8, 9-12. So on this one, I've showed you this K-5 and the 6-8. And they'll explain that at RES, math classes are heterogeneously grouped. They provide a variety of industry-related, there's a whole statement about it. Then if you look in there, we're going to list our primary resources so you can tell what we've adopted. Then we're going to list our secondary resources, and then we're going to list the grade level relationship to the Massachusetts frameworks. So there's someone's looking to move into the district or wants to know a little bit about our math department. Theoretically, the way this will work is they'll be able to go, they'll be able to click on the teaching and learning page, they'll be able to see the names of all of our content leaders, hopefully a smiling face with all our content leaders. They'll be able to click mathematics, and then these mathematics overviews will come up in some format, and there's your kind of look into the district. The curriculum maps will not be front-facing, those are internal documents, because many of our teachers are super savvy and they're hyperlinked to assessments and all kind of resources. But so that's really the frontward-facing work. These are drafted in almost every content area, I believe, except visual arts, because we haven't had a visual art coordinator this year. So by the time that website goes live in September, unless we run out of gas, the hope is that all of this information will be live on the website. A huge, huge transparency shift when we hit the ground.
Do you suppose there's any interest in also linking these pages to the state standards on which these are based? Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
It's probably linked there now, but I'm not sure you'll find it on the website. But yes, they will be.
I really like the curriculum overview. I think it's really smart, and I think as a parent, well, as a teacher, even today I talked to a parent, a 7th grade parent, about what it looked like in high school, and this would have been a great resource to be able to direct a parent to. And then from a parent's perspective, I would love to be able to look at this grade level wise, but also what is the next step for my child. So I think this is really smart.
So interestingly, that was the internal conversation. We had veterans who said, I've worked here in this department for 20-something years, 25 years, and I teach X grade, I don't want to out anybody in a small district, and I didn't know what they did 3 grades before me. So we do operate in silos, which is unfortunate sometimes if we don't force ourselves to not do that. So again, this work was really interesting. So now the internal maps will all be shared. So if I'm teaching 5th grade math or 6th grade math at the middle school, I can look back on that map and see, this is what. So when a teacher says we didn't learn that, they can, as a matter of fact, it was embedded in your curriculum. I see that it was taught in 3 different units. There's going to be some good consistency and knowledge there, which I think just we don't do well sometimes.
So you all will stop me if I'm asking too many questions, but this leads me then to wonder whether there's time built into teachers' planning so that elementary can talk to middle and middle can talk to high school.
So right now, it's basically done during early release professional development days. Within each school, if principals get creative with the schedule, it can actually happen. So we have a team model at the elementary and the middle school, so they have common planning on all grade levels anyway. So if you want to do cross-graded departmental work, it's a little more difficult. But as we move forward with a different model in the 6 to 12 school, I would suspect with one schedule that becomes way easier too.
So in terms of next year, the 3 or 4 meetings we'll have where it's more of a deep dive, I know you've given just sort of a preview of what they'll look like. Are there any concerns from any of the committee members that we want to make sure that we see X, Y, or Z? Or do you imagine, how do you imagine those looking, Mark? I know it's a little premature, but is it sort of a, materials like this would be accessible prior to the meeting
Right.
and then a walkthrough by
Right.
the.
Right. Yeah, I'm probably some kind of slide deck from a department head, right? So, the mathematics curriculum coordinators, there'd be 3 of them would probably come together, work with the math teachers and say, look, we're on the hook to put together some kind of math overview for the committee and the public. And, some kind of nice commercial about where we are, where we're going. And it'll be probably fluid. There'll be pieces around PD, pieces around adoption and implementation, pieces around student work. In some districts, I've seen departments bring students in to demonstrate, particularly around new math, right? It's really not new anymore, but it still feels new to those of us who are old.
Right.
So it could be a mix of authentic examples of kids doing the work or teachers. But in general, I would suspect it's going to be the curriculum coordinators coming in.
Okay.
And I wonder, I think that establishing the maps, creating the practice of keeping them updated is enormous. And I would hope teachers would realize that we appreciate how much work this will be and that it feels like a great opportunity to share and celebrate how far they've come. I'm guessing that somewhere down the line, there's another layer of conversations around the interventions and what happens if somebody doesn't get there. Yeah, thank you.
You're gonna hear about MTSS initiatives and SEL initiatives all next year. Yeah. As the strategy for district improvement gets developed and we identify the big rocks out of my entry plan, all of that, meeting the needs of all learners is all gonna fall into those areas. Yeah.
And I would imagine a part of that connects to efficacy, where we have all of these great goals and a structure of the curriculum, but ultimately tying back that loop to, and if the performance isn't what we think it should be, how do we relook at that curriculum and see if it's.
So yeah, this was an interesting year. It was my first year as a first-year superintendent, right? So we didn't talk a lot about growth and achievement. We talked a lot about practices and setting foundational expectations, but now moving forward, there's going to be enmeshed with those conversations. It's going to be around growth and achievement, and you're going to hear me talk about growth more than achievement. It's the parent in me, and it's sort of the artist and musician in me. You know, being better tomorrow than you are today. I'm not a big achievement guy. I'd rather say that Johnny is better than he was yesterday, and to me, measuring someone's growth is way more valuable to me over time. So that's one of the few things that I think the MCAS got right, was to make sure that they give us a growth model,
Right.
and that we use that wisely.
Good. Other questions, concerns, comments? It looks like this year has been one of sort of consolidating a lot of material that was already there, maybe in different formats, coming up with a consistent line through, as you've said, and then moving onward would have that as a basis to then have conversations with.
The only thing before you skip to that slide in front of you is the last slide here. I just wanted to make sure I reminded us all that we weren't just documenting, that there was a whole bunch of adoption review happening. So we did the K-5 ELA adoption that I presented about a month back with Houghton Mifflin's Into Reading program, with a 3-year commitment, print and digital. And all of that professional development is going to kick in. I'm also in the middle of negotiating a contract with Joan Sedita's company. She runs Keys to Literacy. And so we're going to try to bring Keys to Literacy in for a 3-year commitment to do professional development K-8 in the science of reading. And so that'll be coupled with our adoption of Into Reading. And so that's going to be a big initiative. And this year, our elementary teachers have had landmark writing training all year long. So between the landmark program, kind of attacking the writing, and then Keys to Literacy coming in and supporting the science of reading and evidence-based reading practices, we know that change takes time, so I don't expect to see miraculous shifts in standardized testing this year in the test they just took, but arguably we could say that a year from now, when they take another test, there should be some kind of data change there. You also know that I skipped over it, but 9 to 12, that we've adopted Project Lead the Way. Our teachers are quickly ordering all of those materials. I see the emails and the receipts come through every day. So they're really excited to get those resources in. And Mr. Sabo has already started professional development with Project Lead the Way. So Ms. Swanson and Mr. Sabo will both be participating in 4 different, either virtual or face-to-face professional development over the summer to get them trained up and ready to hit the ground running. And I would be remiss if I didn't address the FOSS. So historically, some of you might know this, that when the district adopted the FOSS science program, it was sort of piloted in 3 grades. And I started to ask a lot of questions and collect some information around that. And the content leaders and principal and assistant principal and I had a conversation about full implementation and what you're doing to kids when you don't have full implementation programmatically. And so really happy to say that we've just signed a contract for full implementation of FOSS next year, all grades 1 through 5, and that'll be a 7-year digital license with kits and consumables. All of this is done within the confines of the budget we built that the town supported, with lots of support from grants. So in combination with, some competitive grants and some federal grants that come in every year, and the generosity of the community supporting our budget, all of this is possible. So I just need to continuously reiterate that if we continue to build a budget that's needs-based and forward-thinking, we can do this. We don't have to sit here and use older resources and not be cutting edge. It can be done. We just have to be careful and thoughtful about how we do it.
Right, that moves us on to the middle school, high school model update.
So probably not a big public surprise around this particular slide and discussion point, but, we've talked openly at the middle school that, as much as we all love Jeff Rodman, we can't keep him here forever. He's retired multiple times already. We brought him in for his expertise in middle school. He's coming back next year as interim 1 more year. And really, the goal is to have him help us transition to a middle high school concept, to a 6 to 12 concept with 1 principal, 2 assistant principals, the potential for a half-time dean, and then 1 team chair or special ed facilitator. So I've showed the numbers here. The real hope is that we function as 1 school, 6 to 12. There are a lot of benefits to that in the long term. I want to talk about the the growth and the work we have to do first, I guess. The reason Jeff is so important and Whitney becoming an assistant principal now is so important is because the work to continue to build middle school philosophy is important. Middle school is a philosophy and a concept. It is not a grade span. It is not a building. It is a way of life. And as someone who's been in middle school his whole life, I subscribe to that. You know that Jeff and I know each other as members from Nelms for years, in my time on that board of directors. So I can assure everybody that just because we rebrand as a middle high school, it does not mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. It does not mean we don't have middle school concept. It does not mean we don't have teaming and all the goodness that comes from middle schools and the ability to flex schedule. What it does mean is we can leverage scheduling and staffing in a way that we can't right now. Right now we run 2 unique schedules. Sharing staff is very difficult. We also don't have a 6 to 12 concept in some content areas. This will allow us in areas like world language, fine arts, STEM, visual arts, performing arts, and those other non-core areas. It will allow us to have a 6 to 12 staff and really leverage their skill sets and their knowledge base so that students can benefit from that particular teacher or those particular teachers over their time within that school. So we've had a lot of conversations about this. My intent is to talk about it tonight and then go back to the middle high school and have a couple voluntary staff meetings and just basically, it's really not a secret, but I just feel like it's never been formally stated, and I really want to make sure that the committee and I are on the same page with this conversation before it becomes a real public conversation. You're also going to see it baked into the strategy for district improvement. It's going to be part of our community building and part of our goals, and some of our big rocks will tie to transparency and communication and a vision, portrait of a graduate work that we'll do down the road. All of that's going to be important because a 6 to 12 accreditation is different than a 9 to 12 accreditation. So that's something that I put here on the next steps that we'll talk about in a minute, that Amy and I have a letter drafted to go to NASDAQ for accreditation. Want to make sure we somehow communicate, other than in this forum, to families and staff, and then make sure that our strategy and our budget are developed to support this change. But I really think, I think it's the right move for the district from a philosophical standpoint. We've talked about right-sizing the district, so to speak, over time, and I think it's a right-size move. I think it helps us be fiscally conservative and responsible. Change is hard for everybody, but I do think if we get the right people in the room, the biggest lift will be that Amy, Jeff, and I will triple chair a 6 to 12 scheduling committee next year with lots of input to discuss how to build a 6 to 12 school schedule that is fluid and that meets the needs of everybody within. So with that, I'll stop and let you guys discuss.
So for context, I do remember when we moved from this model to a principal at each building. And at the time, there was a lot of concern that why was this needed given the size of our school district? And I think part of what Mark has introduced in rolling out this concept is it works provided that you have adequate supports underpinning that 612 principle. And it feels like what you're laying out here addresses that point. And I think part of the great value Mark continues to bring to the district is a comparison externally to what is best practice, what numerically makes sense in other districts, and then in our district, why are we not consistent with that? And there may be good reasons for that, but really relative to our own budgeting, what makes sense. And this feels intuitively like it probably makes sense, but not to say that there isn't a lot of traditional reworking of how we maneuver inside. But the idea that, we have 2 different schedules, but we often share teachers between middle and high school, I can't imagine how difficult it makes it for them or for the administrators to try and leverage their expertise to the children's benefit across that entire learning spectrum. And we already have kids who see the same teacher for many years of their experience. It just seems like it has a lot of inherent value if we do it right. I don't know if they're...
I think that communication to families is going to be a really key piece of this, and just making sure that Because I think a lot of us remember when we went from this model to the other model, and we gave all these reasons why that, at the time, why that was the right decision at the time. It was the right decision, but I think people are gonna say like, oh, you know, why is this different than then? So I think a lot of communication, I think underpinning and having that support for the principal, and also having the right people. Like, I'm very excited about sort of the team that we discussed tonight, and and the way that they'll be able to support the principal. So I think that communication piece, doing that early, and what you described, the middle school isn't just gonna kind of be junior high school. You know, well, that doesn't make sense, but they're
No,
not
it does
gonna be
make- no,
they're
you're
not gonna be
right.
the
No, you're
junior,
right, yeah.
the junior high school. They're gonna, you know, keep their middle school identity, and even maybe have more of a middle school identity than we have had in the past. So that will be a key point, and I'm sure, I have great confidence that will happen.
Yeah, and I think some of it, you know, I've joked about that I tend to be a leadership wonk. As I read leadership, I study leadership. I think some of it was around leadership too, right? What people get nervous about is if you don't have a designated middle school leader or a designated high school leader, the other group of staff feels like they're going to get the short end of the stick. I just think that's human nature to feel that way. That's not been my experience. My experience is that you have to have the right leader, and you have to have the right mindset as a staff that we're a 6 to 12 school. We're one school with two philosophical drivers. One is middle school concept, and the other is high school and career readiness, college and career readiness. And so if you have those two drivers in hand, and you have the right system and the right players by name and place on an admin team and a leadership team, we can get that done. And that's the value of having Jeff work with Amy next year and having Jeff work with the faculty this year. He and Whitney have already drafted a draft schedule that's different next year, where they're going to be piloting advisor-advisee models in one particular grade level, and some things that we've been talking about that just haven't come to fruition. And then putting that curriculum leader in the health and wellness position after all these years is going to be a huge boost, because we really can't continue to sit around and blame the state for not finishing those standards. We still need to move forward. So I think those right there, that's middle school in itself, is taking care of, you know, that particular health and well-being of the child at the young adolescent level is going to be super important. So they're already working on structural changes now, in kind of a micro way that can then be developed into a full-blown schedule next year.
I'm sorry not to know this. I don't know when I don't know when the split was.
It's happened like 3 or 4 times, it seems like, over 30 years. I think it's gone back and forth, but you might be a veteran who knows the answer.
I can't tell you the exact time. You might remember as a parent. Right, and then we had gone to one principal, oh gosh, 15 years ago or so. And it worked, and then it didn't work, so then they went back to the old way of a true middle school, and like you said, it's a philosophy that they thought because of it's two different ways of educating the child, that you needed two different leaders. So it went back, and it was time to a principal leaving.
Yes. So we know our districts run on Meals and Wheels, right? And so do we already have a common start and end time, and will our food service be okay?
Yeah, we have common start and end in that building. As a matter of fact, they're already going to pilot lunch changes for next year. And again, when you talk about equity and you talk about access, there's no real reason why you can't mix lunches by grade, so that, you know, your student has to take or wants to take this particular course. It's only offered at this time. And so you go eat with kids from another grade level. Like, that's, to me, I'd rather let that happen than tell you can't take that course in a small high school because it only gets offered once. So one schedule, one school, one set of clock times down the left side, if you can visualize a schedule, right, it offers a lot of benefits to meeting the needs of kids. That, not that we're not doing it now, we'd just be able to do it better. And space, we've already noticed as we, as we right-size the district with adults and students, we will be able to leverage space. There's a lot of space in that school that can be repurposed. You saw us repurpose a whole section of the elementary school for central office. It was a heavy lift for Kirk, but in general, it didn't feel like the heavy lift, right? Don't tell him I said that. But I do think, we can repurpose. Might not need 2 offices. Maybe that space is prime real estate for some other programming or some other centrally located something for the schoolhouse.
So I think there's a real opportunity for communication right now. This is an open meeting, and I don't know whether we would expect to see this on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow morning. I have no idea in Cape Ann how quickly a meeting like this turns into that kind of public information.
So I have my end of year newsletter kind of queued up. My intent originally was to do what every superintendent does and kind of send it on the last day of school. But then this morning I started rethinking what we were doing tonight, and that maybe I send my end of the year some more sooner than later. Maybe it goes out by Friday if possible, or maybe I send one communication out related to this. But my original intent is to put something out to the parent base from me, just saying, in case you missed it, Wednesday night at the school committee meeting, we discussed yada, 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 put some little commercial behind the why.
The other thing I hear you talking about, and I don't know how clearly the community hears this, you are thinking hard about right sizing, and this is an opportunity to restate that, that is part of what this is about. And I think that's a powerful message for people who maybe aren't parents to hear.
Yeah, and I think we've been even at the point of looking for the replacement for the last superintendent. That message has been consistently broadcast. I think what's really important for the parents to hear is, for some years, right sizing has to do with costs and, there's one less principal, but for parental ears, they want to hear how this allows us to leverage resources to provide better, more synchronized opportunity for students. So I think both of those pieces have to be in a clear message, because our charter really isn't to reduce costs at all costs. It's really to provide the best environment with the budget we have that meets the state requirements for graduation. And I think your plan is doing this, but for some it'll be shock and awe. It's why is that principal position going away? And I think the good news is there's also this is the very first blush where you're confirming it. There's a year-long runway here where Jeff is still here, so that it's not like turning a switch and suddenly you're coming back in September and nobody knows what they're doing. There's a long train-in, burn-in plan in place, but I think that's really critical to get the leveraging of resources benefit to me as a student / parent of student, in addition to right sizing, because that's a part of right sizing too. It's doing it more efficiently, and potentially for some kids this will be more opportunity, the ability to take courses that they wouldn't before because they were constrained by
That's right.
building lunch hours.
I really think that's right. I think that when you go to one common schedule, suddenly there are opportunities to go forward and back, and suddenly you may free up resources that you didn't realize were constrained because they were separated into 2 separate schools. It's a big opportunity for students. Yeah.
The only thing I'm going to ask is that my intent is to have some kind of voluntary staff meeting, whether it's tomorrow or early, before I get a message out. So if they're watching it, they're all going to see it, and it is what it is, right? And if our friend at the Gloucester Times, snags it and runs with it, so be it. But minimally, I'll meet with the staff tomorrow. Good.
So this is, I think the consensus is this is exciting, and if done right, a real opportunity for growth, so.
Good, thank you. So, wanted to give you another commercial on some of the work that's happening around core values. That was something you were just mentioning earlier about the website. So this is a graphic that you've seen a couple times now in different documents that I'm using. The picture is of our faculty at 2 different faculty meetings doing a workshop, or participating in a workshop rather, around core values that I structured for us about 2 or 3 weeks ago to really kick this work off in an inclusive manner. So I just want to, this was an hour and a half workshop, but I'm going to give you like the 4-minute version, just so that you can have a flavor for what we did as a faculty and where that's going to take us. So I talked about the building blocks when you build a strategy for district improvement. So we talked about core values and vision, talked about what a theory of action is. That's an if-then statement. We talked about the strategic objectives, which a lot of people talk about being the big rocks, and then our strategic priorities. The literature goes back and forth. Many times people talk about mission and vision, and they lump them together. And if I ask 10 educated people the difference between mission and vision, 10 educated people give me 10 different answers. Sometimes the current research around it talks about the importance of core values, and that if you really are deeply rooted in your core values as an organization, the mission is kind of a duh statement at that point. What's really most important and most valuable are the core values. So that's the work we wanted to do before the staff left for the summer, so that the leadership team and I can then spend some time on the rest of these building blocks and be ready with some kind of draft document for September. So I won't read through all of these because you have it, but what I used some literature, pulled together some kind of synthesized definitions that we are going to lean on as a district around what core values are, what a vision statement is, what a theory of action is. Then we talked about the strategic objectives and what those purposes are, and ultimately the strategic priorities. I'll pause for a minute on that section. So we've talked about school councils already and who the representatives are, and how that was sort of just a pre, mid, and post this year. What's going to happen is in the new strategy for district improvement, the back end of the document, that's where the strategic priorities will be listed. Those pages will take the place of the school improvement plans. So right now, what's happening with some of my colleagues across the Commonwealth who are getting really innovative is, instead of having all these separated documents, you have one live iterative plan in place. We're not even going to call it a 5-year strategic plan like we used to do. It's just live. And so when you get things accomplished, you get things accomplished, and when you have new work, you have new work, and that continues to evolve. And so the work of the school councils will be to help the leadership of the schools put together and monitor the work around the strategic priorities as they link to the big rocks on the front pages. So that'll make a little more sense to you as I move forward. And my coach, Chris McGrath, and I had a great meeting yesterday, I think. All the days are blurring together. Yesterday. And we had a conversation about me bringing basically a district school council together for the first meeting of the year, so all 3 school councils can come together, and I chair that meeting, and we really talk about the purpose, and we give them the commercial for the strategy, and talk about the importance of working on these priorities, and then they kind of run out to their schools for 3 or 4 meetings for the rest of the year. So it sounds like a really good recommendation that I will probably take at that
I
point.
think that'd be great, because the school councils all run extremely differently, and they
right.
don't have that through line
Right,
of
so-
what we're doing, so that'd be very
That makes-
helpful.
good. All right, that's what I was hoping to hear. So then we dove into a little workshop here, and we had, old school chart paper up, and we had the tech put away, and we talked about this prompt. Imagine that you are at your retirement ceremony and your current students come back to honor you. What do you want them to say about their time in your classroom? And they were broken up into grade level or content teams across the cafeterias. And really great conversations. Like, you run these workshops and you set a timer and you just hope they're gonna stay engaged for half the time you assign to it. In any format that I've ever taught, that's true, whether they're 5-year-olds or 50-year-olds. But they were super engaged. It was unbelievable the amount of work that the faculty put into this. They really, I don't even know that it was about core values. They just connected with the prompts so deeply. So got a whole bunch of those prompts together. Then we moved on to the second prompt, which is a little play on it. Imagine that your students today return for the 25-year reunion. What is it that you hope they will say about their time here in this school? And that was when they got territorial about the elementary school or the middle school or the high school. And then they each answered. It was basically a brain dump. There was one scribe. Everybody just kind of hollered their answers, and they collected the information to the best of their abilities. Then we moved on, and basically the task was, as a group, come together and look at the 2 charts, your 2 sets of answers, and pull them together and list some underlying core values that emerge from your answers. And after you do that, the charge was you have to narrow it down to 3 or 4 that are most important to the team. You can't get your individual core values take over, really come to consensus, and prioritize them. And so by the end of that workshop, if there were 10 tables, I had 10 pieces of chart paper that had 3 or 4. I really had 3 per table, right? But the most important one was this 3rd piece. And then I did that at the elementary school a week later, went back to my office with 40 pieces of chart paper, took pictures of all of them, put them together, and then the leadership team and I came together, and we held a workshop in my office, and came up with a draft set of 11 or 12 that I literally hit send on this morning. So what, in a perfect world, if we had more time, this would be another workshop. You'd go back out to the teams, and they would help you drill down even more based off the draft. But because we don't have that time, I did a Google form this morning. There's 12 selections. Everybody's going to rank order 1 through 12. And then the leadership team and I, after taking a little bit of time, will come together in July, and we'll pull those together into anywhere between 4 to 8 to 10 core values. The research talks about 3, then the research talks about 10. There's no right or wrong. What it does talk about is firmly planting those roots in the ground. So if it takes 10 to say who you are, then you say 10. If you can say who you are in 4, you say who you are in 4. The last piece that I just want to assure you the leadership team and I aren't forgetting about is we have all of the data from the surveys, all of the data that you saw in my report of entry findings, with the big quotes and all of the bullet points and strengths and areas for growth. So we're going to cross-check all 30 pages against the final draft just to make sure the community voice is embedded in all of that work. So there'll be a blend from internal and external. And so that will be done. And so that's where we are now, is moving from draft to final. And then the next steps after that will be that, I'll settle in at some point in the summer and start to pull together the big rocks and the front 2 or 3 pages of the plan. And the hope is that the leadership team and I will meet probably 2 to 3 times over the summer just to do workshops around strategic plan development. And then we'll have our 2-day retreat again in August like we did last year. And theoretically, I come to you with everything except the priorities, everything except those building-based pieces put together. And if I don't hit that mark, it'll be September. But I'm aiming for August. So questions, thoughts about the strategy?
I want to compliment you. In a big district, one person would have done the budget 4 months ago. Somebody else would have come in with those HR updates, and a different person would have come in to talk about this process, and they would have had 4 assistants at 4 different levels doing the chart paper. I've never heard a superintendent talk about using his or her cell phone to take a photo of the chart paper. Like, chart paper is ubiquitous, right? We have been to so many workshops with chart paper, but it's not usually the superintendent taking the photos. So I must say, I'm impressed to listen to you talk about this work. It's not that the work is unique. It's just that and perhaps this does happen all over the Commonwealth, where school districts are so very small that superintendents do 7 different things very well, or 12 different things, or 95 different things. So I just thank you for this work. It takes a long time to think through and to get right, and it's really important. It gives people a voice, and it won't work unless this was generated by the people who do the work. So good for you. Don't lose your cell phone.
It is exciting to see that, way back in September, you talking about some of this work and your vision and your plan, and to see it starting to really start rolling and taking shape. Like, I can really see everything you've been talking about starting to formulate together into one. And I want all that stuff you keep saying is coming in September. I want it right now, because it's so exciting. It's so exciting to see. I can't wait until after the summer to see it all. So it's really, really great.
I mean, I think I can't say it enough that you can't do, I've been in enough districts to know you can't do this work well if there's no buy-in either, right?
Right.
So, there was that relationship building phase where who's the new superintendent, who's the new staff, where we all have to get to know each other, and there's a trust level, and every time I run a session or shoulder to shoulder with another leader around PD in the district, I sometimes just say I'm sorry for what I'm about to do, because I do know the level of the work it takes when somebody new comes in or when we start to chart the course together. It is a lot of work. So the faculty and staff have really embraced the work, and you don't have to be in love with everything we do, right? And clearly I might not be either, but the work is so important that we set that base, and we've talked about why. We've talked about the importance of remaining our own school district and being competitive and retaining high-quality staff. And providing students with equitable and high-end programming. When you do all of that work, if it's not rooted in core values and some kind of plan, that's when, you can't justify a budget, that's when you can't make the right hires, that's when you can't adopt curriculum, so it is all tied to the work. But I've been super impressed with the quality of the faculty and staff, and, you know, that's not always true in some places.
Great. Well, and it's reassuring to see change without engagement as a non-starter. I mean, you made that point, Amy, and I think it's really encouraging that you saw so much conversation around those. Well, now something exciting.
Yeah, a totally different shift. I'll give the intro and then kick it to June here. So June and I met with Charlie L, I believe is how he pronounces his
Yeah.
last name, EHLL, from Guardian Energy Management Solutions. So this is the company that we were engaged with previously around the first half of the lighting initiative when they had done some upgrades in the buildings. And as you might remember, when we presented the capital improvement plan early in the fall during the budget season, we had built out either in year 2 or in year 3, or maybe even in both, we had built out some support from the town to try to finish the lighting upgrades in both buildings. So Charlie has been like a dog on a bone, I think, reaching out to June to really try to get into our office. We finally said yes. And the good news is that June's going to step us through a proposal here. And you have the front pages of this information, not all of the backup, but we give you the front pages to show you that if we talk this through tonight, and if you're okay with us moving forward, we could put ourselves in a position where all of these lighting upgrades get done before the first of the year next year, through our operating budget. And then we can either, you know, say to the town, listen, we've, you know, not in a position to ask for that same amount of money, or we can reallocate that amount of money, which would be a big win for us financially and politically too. So I'll let you go.
Well, thank you. I think first we should probably just review what we had requested in our capital packet.
Yeah.
And that was basically just giving the town a head up, and then in fiscal '25, we were going to request $116,000 plus to finish off the conversion to LED in the middle school. The green team had, the town's green team had taken care of a lot of the high school, converting over to LEDs at minimal to no cost to the town. We do notice a significant difference in the quality of lighting in the middle school, and we feel that it's conducive to learning, removing mercury from our buildings. There's lots of benefits to it. But that opportunity for free money is gone, and it's not just a Rockport thing, it's a state, it's a national thing. So we were giving the town a heads up that we were probably gonna be coming back with $116,000. Charlie met with us. That project in today's dollars is now $150,000. So what would it be a year from now? And then this isn't even addressing the elementary, which we would have been putting on next year's as a heads up for fiscal '26 and '27. And right now, the elementary is coming in at $130,000 for right now. So would that be $170,000, $200,000? Conceivably, we could be asking the town for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for well-needed projects to save, to go green, whatnot. This gives an opportunity to free that money up so that we're not asking the taxpayers to do that. We're building it into the budget. Charlie came back with a program that Guardian does this work, and it becomes part of your National Grid bill. And they would tackle both schools now. So the whole district would have LED lighting, which I think is a really good plan, and we can see the savings immediately. He's thinking that the project would be done probably at the end of November, December, and they would start this summer. And what they do is then they put the cost, National Grid puts the cost over 5 years onto your electric bill. So now it's part of our utilities budget. So we're not asking the town for $200,000 right up and then out of free cash. It's just now we've built it into our utilities budget. But we're also seeing the savings immediately. So it's a net cost. So the cost may be, and again, this is having to assume that the cost of electricity is constant, and we know that's not true. So it's a best guess on Charlie's part and Guardian's part, but I think in talking with Manchester and some others that are maybe 6 months ahead of us on this. They haven't done the cost analysis, but they have a really good feeling about this. They've used Guardian as we did with the green team. And they've had a really good feeling that this is the way to do it. It's minimally invasive to the town. And we just would add it into our budget next year. And next year would only be a half cost. So for example, he's estimating that to do all of this throughout the district would cost us about $4,700 to $5,000 a month would be added onto our electric bill. However, we should see a savings of approximately $3,700 immediately on our electric bill because we're using LED lights. So the net, excuse me, the net difference, about $1,000 to $1,100 that it truly would cost the district
Per
over
month.
5 years.
Okay.
So now we're only asking the town to adjust our budget, maybe 12 to, and say electric does go up, so 12 to 20,000 a year for 5 years, versus asking them to postpone some other town project or another school project, because we're taking so much of their free cash. So I think it's a great opportunity. Again, Avi Urbas, who is the Director of Finance for Manchester Essex, just completed a project at of converting one of their 13-year-old schools to LEDs using this exact same system. So he doesn't have a cost, but he has every confidence that Charlie's numbers are going to come across as accurate and well worth it. Also, I should note that LED lights will also have a longer lasting. They last a lot longer, so now you're looking at our maintenance of replacing these bulbs much further down the road than what we would be doing year to year. I do not have that data. That would be Kirk that would know usually about the life expectancy of bulbs with mercury versus LED. I don't have that data. But with this, we're looking at next year that it's only costing us about $6,000, $7,000. So I would really ask your consideration to go forward with this. I think it's green, it's cost efficient, it's not that painful to the budget, and we certainly could just add that, explain it, educate the town that this is why our budget is 20,000 higher than what we initially planned, but the cost savings to you is that you can use that $100,000 for some other town and school improvements that might have been postponed because of our ask.
So June, the system that they're referring to, is it beyond just the bulbs themselves? Are there other components that need to be replaced?
I think they replaced, not an electrician, but I
No.
think they replaced the whole baffle
It's
system,
the
right?
unit, because
Yeah, I think it's the
obviously,
whole unit. I think the unit comes
Right.
out, the new unit goes in.
So, so the ongoing cost, once they replace the unit, is just the bulbs?
Correct.
it's just the bulbs.
Because the
And
fluorescents.
they've done
are
this
back.
already in the high school. So this Guardian company had done the high school project. So it's not bringing in a new vendor.
Right.
It's not now we're dealing with how they did it in the high school versus the middle school, how they would do it, where you're juggling in a normal bid process. You could have 3 different vendors over these years.
There wouldn't be a continuity of product or of
Right, we're not
craftsmanship
committed to
either.
Guardian for bulbs going
No.
forward for the next 20 years.
No.
No, but if you've walked through the middle high school and you go upstairs where it has the LED, and you basically go to the dungeon of the middle school where we don't have it, I mean, it is total, it's like, you get depressed when you walk down there, like you can feel the social emotional shift in your body, you know, it's just, it's dark,
Right.
it's different, you're already downstairs. So I think there's a lot of value, and if you bore that out over the 5 years, whatever it comes out to $100,000, I'm roughing it, you know, that the difference in that between the $400,000 or $500,000 potential projection, if we did this through
Right.
capital, it's a no-brainer over time.
Yeah. And in terms of our own budget, so the premise is our electrical bill, because they blend in those migration costs essentially into the national grid bill. So that'll go up. So potentially, we have to do something with that next year for the budget, whether we just add it on, whether we
Right.
compensate with some other.
Right. So
Cost.
for the 23-24 year, because it's such a small cost, because of
Right.
when they will turn the switch on, so to speak, you know, we're gonna be okay for the current budget that we just built. So when we get into the budget season next year, right, we'll have to decide, you know, is it really gonna be an increase in the ask, or are we just moving dollars
Do we
around
eat
from
it,
line
or
item
do
to line
we-
item, right?
Yes,
Right.
and that's a decision at your level, whether we,
Yes, how we build
like
it.
you said, we eat it and we make cuts somewhere else,
Yep.
or we find, or we just say that, you know, our budget has gone up by 10, 20,000 more than what we originally would have done because of this, but here is the benefit to you.
I
And
think,
that we're taking this off the table.
Right.
I
And
think
hadn't I'm sorry to interrupt, the green team, I remember maybe 2 years ago, had made a presentation for, and some of those, I think they presented a figure of about $1 million in savings, but some of that may have been blended in with the town, although I thought it was just about the school, and some of them may have been outdoor parking lights, so it feels like what we're talking about here is a proven vendor, one we've used, one who we've already realized savings with, benefit to the town potentially in terms of freeing up cash. Is there anything we haven't thought of in terms
No,
of?
they've been vetted by the state. They're
Vetted
on
by
the
the
state bid
state.
list for this special energy bid that you don't have to go through all, now it's saving our
usual.
time and advertising and doing this. And that it's seamless, that National Grid then absorbs it in the billing. It seems to be pretty seamless in that a lot of other districts are using it. I know, Manchester Essex has done it. Tewksbury, Billerica, which is your old stomping grounds, Amesbury, several districts have done this. I wish that it was still free and with federal money through our town green teams, those grants are gone.
Right.
So it's how do you finish your work for long-term savings? It's a town philosophy to go green. What can we do in the cheapest way possible to contribute to that vision?
and nothing gets cheaper, everything gets more expensive, right?
And
So
I'm
the-
shocked at the price jump over the initial, and it was Guardian that gave us that quote to come up with the 116.8 as a estimate, is already jumped just for that project to 152. So,
Yeah, it's not good.
it's not gonna go back down.
And just a general info question, when we buy our electricity, are we in a pool with the town? Is
Yes.
that a town decision? So we're really not,
We have gone on our own in the past. We just bundled with the town. The town did all the work. Thank you, especially to the DPW department, office staff who did all the legwork. They did get us a rate cut from 30 kilowatts down to 12.
right,
So,
Huge.
thank you very much.
Yeah, huge.
Thank you very much. Of course, now we're going to absorb some of the cost for 5 years back, but the town may be doing that with some of their buildings going forward if they haven't done it as well. I'm not familiar whether Guardian is approaching the town or if the Guardian right now is tackling schools, because schools are usually the biggest buildings
right.
in
and the
districts.
Heaviest users.
Yes, and the
just
heaviest users.
One last off the reservation question. Do you know with those CPC, is that going to be sort of a periodic investigation for electricity costs, or was it a one-off?
I don't know.
Don't know. And you
No.
don't have to know that
No.
either, just curious.
No, the
because-
12,
yeah.
12 cents was an amazing rate, and I think if you notice, your home bill also dropped. I know mine at home went down to about 18. So,
It did in response to the rate increase, and that's for, I think, a 3-month period. So who knows in 90 days what
Mm-hmm. Right.
happens next.
and the town locked in, we also do that with oil, the town, so our heating, the town takes on that, and of course, they want our usage to get a better discount.
Right.
So
Sure.
the town has done that in the past for us as well. This is the first time in quite a while that we have joined with the electric. We've usually done our own. The Director of Buildings and Grounds usually meets with different suppliers that are on the state bid list and signs up. And it's worked, but this was a great heavy lift on their part to do that, and I think it will benefit us, especially with the new DPW construction as well, if that's bundled in. I think the
Right.
town across the board will enjoy a lot of savings off of that negotiation, and if we can contribute by going green in our lighting,
Right.
I think it's the benefits everybody.
And would that, at that point, would that cover all of our lighting?
Yes, so instead of.
So we're 100%.
So we're high school, instead of finishing up the common areas and the middle school in '25, fiscal '25, and then in '26, looking into the elementary, we're now going to be done by
That's so
mid-year '24. We're already fully converted.
That's really.
So I think it is, the cost savings is well worth it.
And it does tie into some of the conversations I had with the committee really early when I went on environmental walks and talked about how over time we just haven't given our building and our classrooms a lot of love. You know, so, you know, Kirk has just finished up with all of the vendors so that the other capital asks that are on there, they're gonna get happening this summer is we're gonna do half the floor work, we're gonna do half the blinds and shades. So this year, you get half the floors, half the shades, next year you get the second half. So within a 2-year period of time, from last July 1st, over the next 2 school years, you get all of that environmental upgrades, not to mention the furniture and the science, all 3 science classrooms that was gonna be purchased through capital, the 2 STEM classrooms, where all the new engineering programs, all of that came out of capital. You add this to that, and we have made some massive environmental improvements in a super fast amount of time.
It proves you can have an older building.
Yep.
You don't have to do new construction. You can take an older building and maybe not the huge, you know, the boilers and whatever, that's not, but you can make these small, relatively inexpensive changes, and you can change not only the cost savings, but the appearance, and that reflects into learning as well. A happy space, it just ties so well, and that to be able to do all this through the generosity of the town this year is just amazing. All the capital projects that were approved for every department townwide, so thoughtful this year. I was so impressed. How many projects across the town that you're gonna see in a very, very old town that has very conservative values of how we approach improvement and construction and maintenance. I think you're gonna see a lot of changes everywhere in the town that are just, I think it's just gives a really
encouraging.
nice feeling, and that just translates so much forward, and especially with children, with a happy, healthy, nice appearance of a classroom. I think the learning is just so tied to that.
So I don't think we need a formal vote. I think we just like send it kind of
Yeah, so.
a sense of support, so to speak.
Just add one thing to
Whatever
this
you'd like.
conversation. The last time we met, we talked briefly about looking into doing the tri-board tour between the select board and the FinCom and school committee with the schools, about seeing if that was a possibility for next year. This, I think, is an exact reason why that would be really important to do. For them to see the difference between, as you said, the high school, what it looks like now, and the middle school, what it is now, so they can see that these decisions are easy to make, and they make a big difference for our students. It's not just some theoretical thing we're talking about over here. It actually, like, you walk in the building and you see it right away. And I think this is a reason why we need to be doing that.
I think I mentioned this to Kirk, unless it was in my head, I'll make sure I mention it to him, that we need him to do before and after shots. Right.
Absolutely.
Right now, once everybody leaves, next Thursday, we need some real good walkthroughs with the phone, and he's gonna take some good pictures around everything, and then, literally put that, you're right, so that if we don't get the environmental walk done in the next 10 days or whatever, we got some good before and afters, so we can show the people that matter, like, hey, this is what we've
Well,
done in
for
the
our
community.
annual report,
Absolutely.
go right down to that
Absolutely.
dungeon.
Yep, right.
On a rainy day,
Right.
and
On a
then,
cloudy
Right.
day.
I would also say that I suspect many students would really, really appreciate to understand the difference in the usage comparison. When you are a middle or a high school or an elementary student and you hear about all the things that are wrong with the climate, it's easy to feel like there's nothing you can do. And so kids can be proud that they go to school in a place that figures stuff like this out and that creates a better learning environment. But for them to understand, my school is doing something. We saw the 8th graders asking us about solar panels. We might not get there, but those 8th graders would be ecstatic, I think, to understand, look at these bar graphs. Yeah.
And I can tell you, having been cornered at a local supermarket by one of the most enthusiastic eighth graders unexpectedly, that they are determined to get there with the solar panel.
Right.
So.
I do have an email in my inbox from, I will not name the company, from a company that did a big solar project in my previous district. So they are, they're still looking. They're still trying to get, they're trying to get on people's radar. So we'll start talking.
I also ran into the previous consultant that we had our large meeting on the project that didn't come to fruition. I ran into him ironically at one of the breakfasts. I just sat down at a table, my head was down, I looked up and, hi June, and it was him. He's still doing it, and I said, well, our roof is probably not qualified anymore for the amount, and they said, no, the state has expanded what they consider a life cycle of a roof that used to be considered 20 years was an old roof, because they don't want to pay for these projects, is now decided that an old roof is 30 years old. And so there may be wiggle room. I don't want to raise those eighth graders and have them watch this and go, when are you going to do it?
We get this project done,
But there's still enthusiasm out there in the industry and at, MASS and MASBO and MASC, that the solar people are still out there, and there may be,
That's,
hopefully optimistic.
that's great to hear.
But in the
because-
meantime, if we could do this
Yes.
for not just the eighth graders, but for all of us and for the town, I would like to move forward with this.
Our audience member who talked to the eighth graders that night about what the UU Church had done, he did follow through at the meeting of those eighth graders and told me they also encouraged the eighth graders to put unrelenting pressure on us to make it happen.
Right.
So I told the eighth grader, you go right ahead.
June,
We love it.
I'm sorry, June, I have just one last question. This might be a $6,000 or $7,000 oop next year, and maybe it's a $12,000 thing for the following year. That doesn't seem like an enormous amount of money in the scope of the size of the school district budget, and I just wonder, do you have those kinds of shifts regularly? $6,000 to $12,000
Well, you
shifts?
can. For example, when electricity shot up and your supplier rate got, negated because of that huge jump they were allowed to, we just absorbed going from 20 to 30 cents a kilowatt hour this whole year. So we did have to eat it and make adjustments and thoughtful. The price of oil, the contract that the town did, which usually benefits greatly, was a rack plus. Well, as we budgeted for $2 a gallon, the reality it was $4 a gallon. You have to adjust, and I give a lot of credit to Kirk and with his management of his budget and the district making good decisions on what was really needed throughout the year, that we absorbed all that. We didn't go for an emergency appropriation of help,
Right.
which we could have very well, saying, oil, our budget doubled. We
we
didn't do
didn't-
any layoffs. We didn't do any
We
cut
didn't
of
freeze.
programs.
Yeah, a lot of districts will freeze in January with the fingers crossed, and then they'll release some fund. We didn't find ourselves in that position at all, and I do think that's a credit to a lot of the people involved in making financial decisions and leading departments. And there's nothing worse than being a teacher and going to a principal and saying, I really need this, or I'd like to do this to enhance something, and have them say, sorry, the superintendent's office froze the budget. Like, we've all been there. It's a frustrating conversation to be in. Not saying it'll never happen, but we've been fortunate this year to really manage things well, so.
Yeah.
So whatever you think, our hope is that we can get a blessing on this
So
one, and
I think what we've done in the past, because they don't formally need our approval though, is to ask if there's a motion to encourage the business manager and superintendent to pursue the Guardian Lighting Project update as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay,
much appreciated.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
thank you, June. That's great, great news. School committee discussions. Are there any walk-on items that anyone had? No. Is there a need for executive session?
There is not.
There is not. So, is there a motion to adjourn the June 7th meeting of the Rockport School Committee? those in favor? Aye.
Your next meeting is Wednesday, August 23rd. Enjoy your break. If you don't have this, make sure somebody sends it out. Amanda sends it out to you.
Michael, you will be bothered weekly with warrants.
Excellent.
Okay.